The sky was low and swollen, the color of bruised metal, when they dragged her toward the old hanging tree. The wind came off the mesa sharp and dry, carrying with it the taste of dust and judgment. Every bootstep echoed against the earth like a drumbeat of doom. Alara stumbled once, her bare feet catching on a root, and someone shoved her from behind. The coarse hemp around her wrists bit into her skin. Her hair, long, dark as a raven's wing streaked with copper, hung over her face, sticking to her lips. They called her names with voices that sounded too certain. Half-blood, witch, thief, each word flung like a stone. Men who had once asked her for medicine spat near her feet. Women she'd helped through childbirth turned their faces away. Even the children watched with eyes too wide, clutching their mother's skirts, learning cruelty from the groan. "Bring her under the limb," Sheriff Dalman ordered, his voice booming over the restless crowd. His gray hat shadowed his eyes, and the metal star on his chest glinted dull in the fading light. "Let's end this before the rain sets in." The rain never came to Dry Creek without blood first. A murmur rippled through the crowd as the noose swung gently in the wind. It was rough rope, frayed from use, looped with precision by a man who'd done this before. The tree had hung cattle thieves and murderers, but never a woman. Never someone who'd only ever mended, not broken. Alara lifted her chin. Her lips were cracked, but her eyes were steady. There was pride in her still, too much of her father's blood to bow. He had been Apache, a trader and horseman, killed long before these same people learned to whisper that his daughter was a curse. Her mother had been white, a teacher from Kansas who'd fallen in love with the wrong man and died for it. Alara had grown between worlds that both disowned her. "Any last words?" the sheriff asked, his drawl dragging through the dust. Alara's throat ached from the rope they'd already tested once to make sure it held. "If I die here," she said softly, "the wind will remember me." Someone laughed bitterly. "Wind don't remember nothin' but dust." She didn't answer. She looked past them, over their shoulders, toward the ridge line glowing faintly under the dying sun. For a moment she thought she saw movement there, dust rising, a flicker of motion, but it could have been the wind. The sheriff signaled. The crowd shifted restlessly. The horse beneath her sidestepped, sensing fear. Its flanks quivered. Someone shouted, "Get on with it." Another voice yelled, "Justice for the town. Justice." The word cut through her like ice. Her breath came fast. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She thought of the creek behind her mother's cabin, of nights spent under the stars with her father's flute echoing through the canyons. She remembered his hand on her small shoulder, his voice deep and certain, "The land never forgets kindness, little one. Even when men do. May God forgive you all," she whispered. The sheriff nodded to the man holding the reins. The horse kicked forward. Her body jerked. The rope snapped tight around her neck, searing fire through her throat. For an instant the world narrowed to sound, the creak of hemp, the gasps of the crowd, the thunder in her ears. Her vision blurred with the sky and the faces below her melted into a sea of gray. Then came the gunshot. It tore the air apart. The bullet split the rope with a crack like lightning. She fell, hard, into arms that caught her before she hit the ground. The shock drove the air from her lungs. She coughed, gasped, the world spinning, her throat burning like fire. A voice spoke above her, deep and calm despite the chaos. "Easy now. I got you." The townsfolk froze. The smoke from the shot drifted like ghostly thread. On horseback sat a man in a long, weather-stained duster, a Colt still smoking in his hand. His hat shadowed his face, but his eyes were clear and cold as mountain water. In his arms, Alara trembled, half-conscious. He'd ridden straight into the square, straight into their madness, and stopped it with one bullet. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Sheriff Dalman bellowed, drawing his revolver. "You just cut down a condemned criminal." The man's voice was low, edged with command. "Name's Cole Maddox," he said. "And she's no criminal." The sheriff sneered. "She's half-blood filth. You think you can just ride in here and—" Cole raised the gun again, not aiming but making sure they saw it. The crowd drew back instinctively. "You've done enough," he said. "If this is justice, you can keep it." He shifted Alara higher in his arms, his jaw tight. "She's mine." The words landed heavier than the gunshot. Gasps rippled through the square. "Yours," someone muttered. "You can't mean—" "I mean every damn word," he cut in. "And the next man that tries to touch her will answer to me." The sheriff's face reddened. "You're making yourself an enemy of this town, Maddox." Cole's horse shifted beneath him, muscles rippling under the strain of held fury. "Wouldn't be the first time," he said, voice soft, dangerous. "Won't be the last." He turned the stallion with a single pull of the reins. The animal snorted, ready to run. Dust kicked up as the crowd stumbled back, their courage leaking away in the face of a man who didn't flinch. "Stop him!" someone cried. But no one moved, not even the sheriff. And then Cole was gone, riding hard through the western gate, the dying light framing him like fire, Alara's limp form pressed against his chest. The empty noose swung gently in the breeze, a silent witness to what had just been undone. The wind howled down the canyon as he rode. Alara stirred faintly, her throat raw, each breath a ragged rasp. She tried to speak but only managed a faint sound. Cole glanced down, one hand holding the reins, the other steady around her. "You breathe now, girl," he murmured, almost to himself. "You're safe. Ain't nobody talkin' you from me again." The land stretched wide before them, endless sage and shadow, the far mountains turning purple under the sinking sun. The trail behind them was already swallowed by dust. Back in town, the crowd broke apart slowly, no one willing to meet another's eyes. The sheriff holstered his gun with shaking hands. The noose creaked, swinging lazily in the evening wind. But on the horizon, two figures moved westward, a man and a woman carried by a single horse, cutting through the twilight like a promise that wouldn't die. And somewhere in that dying wind, Alara's last words echoed faint and clear. "If I die here, the wind will remember me." But she hadn't died, and the wind would remember not her death, but her deliverance. Morning came soft and red, spilling light across the valley like a wound healing slowly. The air was cool, and the prairie grass shimmered with dew. Somewhere, far off, a hawk cried, its echo fading into the silence that followed the storm. Alara's eyes fluttered open, her throat raw and aching, her body heavy as if she had been buried and dug up again. She lay beneath a canvas tarp stretched between two pines. The ground smelled of smoke and sagebrush. A small fire crackled nearby, sending curls of gray into the open sky. Her hand went instinctively to her neck, bandaged. The rough burn beneath the cloth made her flinch. "Don't move too quick." The voice came from the other side of the fire, steady, low, and familiar now, though she barely remembered how she'd come to know it. Cole Maddox crouched there, feeding kindling into the flames. The light caught his face, lined, sunburned, carved from years of wind and grit. His eyes, though, were softer than she expected, the kind that looked at a person instead of through them. Alara tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. He was beside her before she could try again, offering a tin cup. "Water. Go slow." She drank, the liquid burning and soothing all at once. "Where?" she managed, her voice cracked to a whisper. "Where are we?" "About 5 miles west of town," he said. "On my land." She blinked, confusion crossing her bruised features. "Your land." He nodded toward the horizon. Beyond the rise of pines and sage, rolling hills stretched for miles, dotted with grazing cattle and weathered fences. A small ranch house sat far off, smoke rising from its chimney. "There's the Maddox place. Not much to look at, but it's safe." Alara's gaze fell to the bandage again. "You helped me. Would have been a sorry kind of man if I hadn't." He busied himself with the fire again, but she could hear the weight in his voice, the rough scrape of guilt under the calm. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why risk yourself for me?" He paused. The wind tugged at the brim of his hat before he pushed it back and looked at her. "Because I've seen this before," he said. "Seen good folks turn to monsters by fear. My mother was Kiowa. My father married her anyway. They burned our place down when I was 12. Alara's breath hitched. She watched him in silence, the truth settling heavy between them. He shrugged slightly, as if the memory no longer had claws. "Didn't figure I'd stand by and let another woman hang for being born wrong in their eyes." Her eyes glistened. "They called me half-blood," she whispered. "Said I was cursed." Cole's expression darkened. "They're cowards, Alara. People too small to understand what's bigger than them. Blood don't make a curse. Hate does." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire popped softly. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorted and stamped its hoof. She drew the blanket closer around her shoulders. The chill had found her bones. "You could have died for what you did," she murmured. "They'll come for you. For us." He looked toward the hills, as if he could already see the dust trails of pursuit. "They'll try," he said. But this land's wide, and I know every inch of it better than they ever will. He turned back to her, voice softening. You let me worry about them. Alara studied him. The man was carved from something unyielding, but there was gentleness in the way he watched her, as if she were a wounded animal he refused to let die. I don't deserve this kindness, she said, her voice trembling. He shook his head. It ain't kindness, Alara. It's right. Tears burned in her eyes before she could stop them. They fell silently down her cheeks, cutting through the dust on her skin. Cole didn't speak. He simply reached for a clean rag, offered it to her without ceremony. She took it, pressing it to her face, and for the first time since the hanging, she let herself cry. When her sobs quieted, Cole was still there, squatting by the fire, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was steady, like the hum of earth before a rain. You called me yours, she said at last. He turned slightly, his jaw tightening. Yeah, why? He met her gaze. Because if I'd said anything less, they would have dragged you back to that tree. And because, his voice faltered, the words rough in his throat. Because I meant it. Her heart gave a strange, painful flutter. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said. I know you've got more courage than every man in that town combined. I know you're still breathing after they tried to take that from you. And I know what it means to have nobody stand up for you. She swallowed hard, her hand trembling over the blanket. And now, he smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. Now you got someone. For the first time, warmth flickered through her chest. The firelight caught the edge of his profile, painting his face in amber and gold. He looked like something out of the old stories, half myth, half man, standing between her and the world. Still, fear lingered at the edges of her thoughts. They'll hunt us, she said again. They won't forgive this. Cole stood and stretched, his duster falling around him like a cloak. Let 'em try. They'll find out what it means to pick a fight with a man who's got something worth protecting. Her breath caught. Worth protecting. He looked down at her. You. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still, the fire's crackle fading, the wind pausing mid-song. She couldn't find words, only a trembling whisper. No one's ever said that. Well, he said, tipping his hat with a slow smile, reckon someone should have a long time ago. He turned toward the horse, checking the saddle and canteens. She watched him move, the quiet competence of a man who belonged to the land. Every motion had purpose. Every sound, the jingle of reins, the soft crunch of his boots, seemed to ground her in a world that, for the first time in years, didn't feel cruel. When he came back, he handed her a biscuit from his pack, still warm from the fire. Eat. You need strength if we're gonna ride out come sundown. She took it, her fingers brushing his. You really mean to keep me here? He crouched beside her again, his gaze steady and unflinching. You're not going anywhere unless you want to. This land's as much yours as mine now. A soft breeze moved through the pines, carrying the scent of earth and rain. She looked toward the horizon, where the sky was opening into light. What if I bring you trouble? He smiled, a slow, tired thing, but real. Trouble's already found me plenty of times. You're different. The quiet stretched, filled only by the rustle of grass and the distant call of a crow. Alara felt something stir deep inside, a small, fragile hope she'd thought had died on the tree. Cole, she whispered, thank you, for calling me yours. He reached out then, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and for the briefest moment his thumb rested against her cheek. Wasn't a kindness, he said softly. It was the truth. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his touch linger like sunlight after rain. When she opened them again, the valley below shimmered, vast and wild, as if the land itself was breathing with them. The rope had taken her voice, but not her spirit. And as she sat there beneath the wide, forgiving sky, Alara realized something she hadn't dared to believe before: she wasn't alone anymore. The wind stirred, gentle this time, whispering through the sage. She listened. It remembered her. And now, so would he.